Alright, hello everyone, today we're solving LeetCode 739 daily temperatures. Given an array of integers, temperatures represents the daily temperatures. Return an array answer such that answered I is the number of days you have to wait for the ith day to get a warmer temperature. If there's no future day in which this is possible, keep answer I 0 instead. So here we quickly sketched out and we're going to explain why this is the answer. So the first day the temperature is 73, the second day is 74. That's a warmer temperature, so it took exactly 1 day to see a warmer temperature. The next day we have 74. It takes a grand total of 2 days to get a warmer temperature. As you see, the last index is 76. And from 72, 1 day again to reach a warmer temperature. And the last day is 76, and it's going to be a 0 because there's no future days at all. So that would remain 0. So here are all the tools we're going to need to solve this problem. What I did here, since we're returning an array, which is going to be the length of temperatures because we need a number for each temperature, each day. We're gonna pre-fill it all with zeros because 0 is pretty much the default value if there's no future day. And what we're going to do is use a stack to solve this problem. And how we're gonna use it is we're gonna have a 2D stack. We're gonna iterate over temperatures and add the temperature and the current index we're on if the stack is empty. And we're going to continue doing that until we reach a temperature that is greater than the top of our stack, i.e. we found a greater temperature than what we have stored. And we're going to just calculate the difference between the stack index and the current index to find how many days the difference. If that doesn't make sense, that's totally fine. That's why we're going to be going over it. So to start off, let's say our stack is completely empty. We're going to iterate through temperatures. So we're going to say 73. We're going to have 73 and 0 because that would be the index. Next, we're going to iterate over again and we're going to be at 74. So we're iterating through our temperatures. So now we're looking at 74. What we're going to do here is check our stack and we're going to say, is the top of our stack, which is 73, less than the current temperature, which is 74? If it is, what we're going to do is pop off our stack. So I'm going to make two variables. Let's just say st for stack temp. It's the SI for stack index. And we're going to pop off. So that's going to equal whatever we popped off. So 73 and 0. So stack temp is 73 and stack index is 0. And we're going to compare that to our current index. So our current, I'm just going to put a C here for current so we're all on the same page here, will be 74 and 1. And we're only going to be popping off if we find a value that is greater than. So what we're going to do here now is get our current index, which is 1, and we're going to subtract the stack index, which is 0. So 0 minus 1 is 1. So we'll replace the first index, whatever the stack index is, which is 0, whatever is the difference between the stack index and the current index, in this case 1. And that's why that would be 1 there. And let's say we continue, and since we popped that off, I want to illustrate that by let's put a little red X over there. So that's been popped off. And we're going to iterate over again. So now our stack is currently empty. And now we're going to append 74. So we're going to have 74 and 1. Now our stack has something in. We move on to the next value. We say we're going to be at 72 now. Let's say 72. We're going to check, is 72... Well, first we're going to say, is our stack empty? It's not. It has a value. And next we're going to say, is the top of our stack, is that temperature less than our current temperature? And the answer is no, because 74 is actually greater than 72. So we're not going to pop off anything, and what we're going to do is continue our loop. So we're going to continue, and now we're going to be at the 76. And before we get there, we're going to make sure to append our 72 before we go into the next loop. So we're going to write that down here. So we're not going to pop off anything. All we're going to do is add. So we're going to have our 72 and our index 2. Little typo there. All right, so next we're at 76. We're going to say, is 76 greater than the top of our stack? It is. 76 is greater than 72, so we're going to pop off again. So as you can see, we're going to store that in a value. Let's just call it same thing, stack temp and stack index, and that's going to equal whatever we popped off from. So what we popped off is the top of our stack, so that'll be right here. And we're going to store it in these values. So stack temp is going to be 72, and our stack index is going to be 2. Now, what we're going to do is find the difference between the current index and our stack index. So as we see, our current index is going to be 3, and our stack index is going to be 2. So 3 minus 2 is what? 1. So we're going to say res at our stack index. And what's our stack index? It's 2. So we're going to go to our res at 2. So 0, 1, 2 is going to equal the difference, which is 1 right here. So we're going to place that and put a 1. All right. So that makes sense. Hopefully we're all following along here. But this is going to be in a while loop. So we've already popped off 1. Our stack still has items in it. So we're going to check again because we iterated through it once. We're going to try one more time. We're going to say, is 76 greater than the top of our stack? The top of our stack now is 74. We're going to say, yes, 76 is greater than 74. So we're going to pop off again. So we have stack temp and we have stack index. And that's going to equal whatever we popped off. So 74 and 1. And since we popped it off, we're going to make sure to exit out. So that's a clear visual that's out of the stack. And we're going to make sure to get the difference. So as we see, our current index is 3 because we're at the last index here and it's 0 index. So 3 minus, and what's our stack index? 1. And what does that equal? 3 minus 1 is 2. And we're going to say res at our stack index, which is the original value, which is 1, is going to equal the difference, which is 2. So res at index 1, so 0, 1 is going to equal 2. And the loop commences and we're just going to return res. And if you see, the answer is 1, 2, 1. And then obviously the 0 stays the same because there's nothing greater than 76. And that's exactly equal to the answer. These two are equal, and that's what we have here. So now we're going to actually get into the code and how we actually solve this. So the first thing I like to do is create our stack. So we're going to say stack equals this empty array. And I like to have a little comment here that just says temp and IDX. So I remember it's a 2D stack. It just helps me remember. And next we're going to make our res variable. Res is just going to equal the length of temperatures, but we're going to pre-fill the array with 0. So 0 times length of temperatures. Next, we're going to have our for loop because we want to iterate over temperatures. So for I in range length of temperatures. And I like to store, since we're going to be using temperatures a lot, I'm not a big fan of typing in like long words. I'm just going to say temp is just going to equal temperatures at I. Just like to store it in a little variable there. All right. So here's the fun part. What we're going to do is say, while the stack, and while stack just means while stack is not empty, and stack at -1, because we want to make sure, as you remember, a stack is first in, last out. So we want to check the back of the array. So use -1 to get the last index in the array. But since it's a 2D array, we have to make sure to get the temperature. The temperature is stored in the first index, so we're going to go -1, 0. And if the top of our stack is less than our current temp, what do we want to do? We want to say, let's just make the same variable names. We're going to say stack st for stack temp and si for stack index equals stack dot pop. We're going to pop it off. So now we have those two variables just like we did in the drawing. And what we're going to do now is assign the res at the stack index to be the difference. So we're going to say res at stack index equals our current index, which is the number that is greater than the number we found at the top of our stack, minus the stack index, just like we did here. So if our stack index is 3 and our current index is 1, we want to subtract them. So 3 minus 1 is 2. And what we want to do is just assign that to be res at the stack index. Here we go. We come out of there. And next, all we want to do is make sure we append something. So let's say the stack was empty. It would not actually reach a little typo there. It would not actually run this line. Let's say the stack was empty. It would say while stack. It would see that the stack is empty and skip this entire line. And we want to make sure it appends things. So we're going to say stack dot append. And we're going to make sure it's a 2D array. Look at our little comment here. We're going to have the temp and the current index, which is I. Here we go. And all we have to do now is return res because we reassigned everything in res, and this should be good. Let's test it out. And there we go. We solved the problem. It's a pretty all right solution. I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace.